Hello, fuckos, and welcome to this episode 66 of the Chris Hunter Comedy Podcast with me, Chris Hunter. Hello, how are you doing? Are you well? I hope you are well, because I am rather well indeed. Thank you very much for asking. Not that you did ask, but I'm going to assume that you did, and that way we can have a nice friendly relationship between us both. Have you had a good week? I went there. English would be a nice language to choose today, I find. I went for my usual burger of the week. This week I went to the fan-bloody-tastic cafe at the end of the universe, and they had a burger called Blame Canada, because it was Canada Day or week or something. I don't know. Canada has a day apparently. But either way, it was a Blame Canada burger, so it was based on the old South Park episode, Blame Canada, you know, Terrence and Phillip and all that jazz. Anyway, it was a burger with cheese and bacon and had poutine on it, which, for those of you who don't know what poutine is, it is basically chips with gravy and cheese curds on it, and it was freaking delicious. It was delicious. It was so nice, in fact, that I was like, oh, I'm so full, but I could potentially order another one of them if I had 17 more stomachs, which I don't. So that's not how it's not how eating really tends to work, I find. It's not particularly helpful to eat so much that you wish you could eat more, but would die in the process. But anyway, after that, I had myself a nice little ice cream sundae. I didn't go for the special this week at Dark Side of the Spoon. Nothing against it. I was just a bit too full for something solid. I thought I'll get myself an ice cream. That way, it kind of drips through the cracks. You know what I mean? So I got myself. They do a sundae called the $5 Shake, which is not a shake. It's a reference to something, which I don't know what the reference is, but it's a reference to something. I should have Googled it first. But anyway, it was bloody lovely. It was raspberry ripple. It was Pop-Tart and other stuff and bits and or bobs. And it was friggin' brilliant. Also, ooh, drum roll please, Dark Side of the Spoon, now do slush. Shut up, alarm. I'm doing the podcast. Sorry, that was my alarm reminding me to do the podcast, which is this very thing you're listening to. Yes, Dark Side of the Spoon, now do slush. See, it ruined my bloody announcement. They do 3 flavours, I forget what they are, but one of them is melon, and it made me very happy, because I love anything melon flavoured, and it was tasty, A to the F. So I had a good, jolly good Saturday. I enjoyed it. Did you guys have a nice weekend, by the way? I should have asked that first, because was it nice weather this weekend? I can't remember. No, it was raining. I remember now. It was grey and dismal. So hopefully you were not all grey and dismal along with the weather. Now, I was looking the other day. I think Charlie sent me a link on Facebook to a Starbucks in Japan. And you may be thinking, but Chris, but Chico, there are plenty of Starbucks in Japan. Why would she send you an article about a Starbucks in Japan? Well, I'll tell you if you bloody well listen. There is a place just about half an hour outside of Tokyo called Kawagoe. Kawagoe? I think that's what it's called. Anyway, it's about half an hour outside of Tokyo, and it is an area that is, it was around in the old days. It's quite an old looking place, hundreds of years old, some of the things there. And the Starbucks that moved there, were actually pretty cool. Rather than putting their usual modern green and glass building in, they thought, you know what, it wouldn't be nice to this area to do that, because all these buildings are historic, they're all old, they're all pretty solid, they all have a specific visual style to them. Let's try and match it. And that's what they did. They made the building look like the other ones nearby, which are basically old shop warehouse type things. More on that in a moment. But yeah, inside the Starbucks, they even didn't use the normal branding. Like normally, like I said, it's green signs, isn't it? Like bold green with like a white figure for the mermaid and whatnot. Instead, they did really understated. Is that the right term? They did really understated like browns and blacks. And then inside it, there's panels on the wall of the old sliding door panels that have got really nice art in them with gold leaf and all that kind of stuff. And in the back, they've got an actual Zen garden with all the stone pebbles all brushed nice and such. And you can sit out there and have yourself a coffee. And one of the coolest things about this area, right? It's a really old area and a lot of it is still preserved. And there's a bell tower there, right? And in this bell tower, there is the very same bell that was there about 400 years ago, right? It's literally the same bell. And it rings 4 times a day. So you can sit at the Starbucks in the coffee garden and you can listen to the bell chime and know that you are hearing exactly the same sound that samurais and whatnot hundreds of years ago were hearing in the same spot. You guys might not give a shit about that, but to me that's something really special, to know that you're sharing a connection with something or someone historical And it's the real deal. It's the same thing, because so much of Japan is what's the word, like refurbishments, because they have so many earthquakes. And back in the day, everything was made out of paper and wood, and everything was lit by candlelight. And when you mix paper, wood, and candlelight, and you also chuck in a little handful of earthquakes, you get yourself a fuck ton of fire. So a lot of things from the past in Japan have burnt down and since been rebuilt. However, this place has got a lot of things that are still quite original, because the street, it was full of vendors, right? Shops and whatnot. And in these shops, right, what used to happen is you'd have a basic shop, right? And it'd be a Billy Basic thing. It'd be built out of simple, cheap, cheap parts. It wouldn't be particularly fireproof or anything like that. So what you'd do instead is you'd build a warehouse for your wares, which would cost a bit more to build, but it'd be a lot sturdier. It would be a lot more fireproof, a lot more earthquake proof. It'd keep all your supplies safe, and then you just transport it to your shop when you're selling bits, and that's a good idea. But this street where all these shops are, they have all done so well as vendors after like massive disasters and stuff. They do really well selling sweets and that kind of thing. And they did so well that they managed to rebuild their shops as the same type of buildings as these warehouses. So they're all sturdy as fuck, which means they've been there forever. And it's so cool to see. I absolutely love it. But one of my favourite things about this area, and don't worry guys, this isn't the History with Chris podcast. I just like my history and I like Japan. So when I learnt about this, I wanted to share it with you bunch of barstools, okay? If you don't like it, hit me a message saying, "Oi, shut up about the history, alright?" And I'll say, yes, I shall. So fuck you. Yeah, that's fine. So what was I trying to say? Yeah, there's a temple, right? There's a temple in this same place where like I said before, the mix of the things that you use to build a building results in fire a lot of the time. So that means that the temple burnt down, right? It burnt to fuck. It was gone. Boof, bye-bye, pile of ashes. But the shogun, who was the leader, the main top brass, the guy in Tokyo with all the answers, he was friends with the priest who owned this temple. And he said to him, "You know what, buddy?" He didn't say it in English, but I'm going to pretend he did. He said, "You know what, buddy? I like you, and it's a damn shame about your temple. How about this? How about I give you a bit of my castle, a bit of my palace, right? I'll send it on up to your place. I'll send it there, and then you can rebuild your temple from these bits." And he said, "All right, cool. Cheers, cocky." That's what he said. That's the exact accent he had. I know, because I was there. That's what he said to him. And so he rebuilt this whole temple, right, with bits of a castle, which is fucking cool to start with. But then, in a bizarre twist of fate, the castle that they came from in Tokyo burnt down. So now, the only part of this castle that still remains in its original, the original pieces, the only parts that exist aren't even in the spot where the castle was. They're in Kawagoe, in this temple. And that is so cool. I love it. I know you guys don't give a shit about history. I'll stop soon. But I like to geek out on history every now and again because it makes me so happy. These kind of little stories you just don't hear. And this is why history is important, I think, to preserve this kind of story, to preserve this kind of situation. This kind of thing, it might have happened many times. We just don't know because not everyone takes notes. That's another reason why I've got this podcast. Because even if nobody anywhere listens to it, which I know some of you do, and I really do appreciate anybody who listens, but even if nobody did, this would still just be a way of me preserving the history of myself, of my day, of my week, all that jazz. And it's just nice to listen back every now and again and say, "Oh, Jesus, that was a bad week." Or, "Hey, that was a good week. I remember that." So it's nice to preserve stuff is the moral of that story, I think. But yeah, speaking of preserving stuff, I've been working on my scene, the game art scene I've been telling you folks about. I've been doing it for ages. There's another, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another 4 and a bit weeks left on it. And I'm telling you, I'm worried. I had a really, really off week last week with the work I was doing. Nothing was going right. And it's mostly my fault. And that's what happens sometimes, because even though you've got a massive skill set, like I know I can do the things I'm trying to do, but the problem is I don't get to do them all the time at my day job because, you do different things all the time. There's no way of saying I only do this one thing, which means that sometimes that one thing gets laid to the wayside? Whatever. It gets put to one side for a bit. And that means you're a bit out of practice with it. And that's my problem right now. I'm a bit out of practice with some of the things I need to do. So in doing them, they were going wrong. But hey, folks, that is how you'll learn. Everyone knows, You learn by mistakes. Make mistakes, people. That is the only way to get better and hopefully learn from them. So that's what I've been doing. I've been making mistakes, been learning from them. But this means that I've been losing time. And I don't have time to lose. So I may have to make some sacrifices at some point in the scene, which I don't want to do. But you know what? We're getting there. It's starting to take an upturn. I've got a couple more bits done. I'm making progress on the next bits. I'm getting a bit of a clearer vision of what I need to actually do next. And that's good. I'm happy about that. This makes my little soul rather light. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good indeed. And in the downtime that I've had between doing stuff, because let's face it, folks, you could be the hardest worker in the world. You still need a break for your own sanity, for your own health, for your own mental health. You need to have breaks every now and again. So what I've been doing this past week to have a break is I've been watching Stranger Things with my dear Charlie downstairs. And it's been great. Don't worry, no spoilers. I'm not going to spoil anything for you. I've now watched season 3. All I'll say is that I really enjoyed it. I like the style of it. I like the idea of combining different people's stories into one story. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a spoiler. It's the way books work. It's the way TV shows work. But the way Stranger Things does it is that it feels a lot more separated, which I like, because it's like, excuse me. It's like, who are we following today? Whose story are we going with? Whose journey shall we follow today? It's really nice. I like the way they did it. And I love the stylization of everything. The 80s theme on everything. I know it's been a bit overdone these days, but Stranger Things is one of the OG for this kind of style. And I love it. I love it to bits. Now, I was born in 88, so I have no nostalgia for the 80s whatsoever. I have a lot of nostalgia for the early 90s, which still feels a lot like the 80s from what I've seen, because that's how eras work, isn't it? They tend to bleed over a few years either side of the decades. And I feel like the early 90s basically was still the 80s. There was shell suits, at least in Liverpool. There was shell suits, there was big hair, whatever. So I can kind of get an appreciation for that, but at the same time, it's really cool to see even things like old signs for shops like Burger King and whatnot. You'd think, oh, that was the old sign. That's pretty cool. Simple, nerdy things like that. But story-wise, I thought it was brilliant. Character-wise, I think the people who act in that show, all the kids especially, are getting so much better as well. And they've never been bad, to be fair. They picked a really solid bunch of actors. But it's nice to actually let the kid who plays Will have a bit of acting space. The kid's got chops. He really has. Because if you think about it, in the first season, not going to spoil it for people in case you haven't watched it, but in the first season, the story revolves around him not being there much. That's not spoiling anything. That's literally the story. The general story that is in the trailer. But yeah, so it's nice for him to be around a bit more and to do a bit more acting, get his old chops out, if you will. And I enjoyed it. It gets 4 Chris's out of 5. How's that sound? I won't give it 5 because I don't think I've given anything a solid 5. But the soundtrack was bloody brilliant as well. They've got a lot of money for licensing fees, I'll tell you that much. Because, expensive, proper songs. That's what they've done. And also, speaking of 80s and early 90s, last night I finally watched a film on the list of classics that I need to watch. That makes it 2 films now that I've ticked off that list. And I'll read some of that list to you in a minute if you want. But last night I went to watch Groundhog Day in the cinema because my local cinema, I think all Cineworlds around the country, except for one in Glasgow Science Centre, they did what they called a double bill movie, in brackets. And they played Groundhog Day back to back. So it's like, repeating it all again. Hey, it's a good joke. Ha ha ha. It's funny. But the problem is, it's funny on paper. In person, not funny. So we left after the first one. Because, look, I get it. Okay, yeah, it's a good joke. It's nice. It's a sweet little touch, Yeah, it's Groundhog Day, so you're going to repeat the whole thing again, and you have to watch it again. Awesome. But, nah. Because it just doesn't work practically. It just doesn't work. But some people still stayed. Some people are psychopaths. Some people are dead in the head. And they stayed. And you know what? Good on them. Good bloody on them. But yeah, I enjoyed Groundhog Day. But actually, give me a second. I'll read you. I have a list on Trello. For those of you who don't use it, it's like a list thing online where you can make lists and organize your day. And I use it a lot for organizing projects and for keeping lists of things that I will forget, like a list of films I need to watch. So I'm going to drag it across now. Groundhog Day is now in the watched category. Yay! Right next to Goonies. Because I hadn't seen Goonies until I made a game are based on it. So I was like, oh, I should watch this. But yeah, as a quick little, a quick little thing of this, an overview of this list. And don't worry, there's a lot on here, so I'm not going to read it out. But for an example of some of the films I haven't seen, and this has been a point of contention for a lot of people who've known me in the past. I've never seen Terminator, I've never seen Trainspotting, I've never seen Rambo, or Predator, or Pulp Fiction, or American Beauty, or Good Will Hunting, or, Aliens, all that stuff. I've never seen them, so they are on the list of things for me to see. But I've now got 2 films ticked off that list. So Goonies and Groundhog Day have both been ticked off, and I'm quite happy about that. I'm looking forward to ticking more things off said list. Speaking of things being ticked off lists, people have bucket lists when they travel and stuff like that. And at the moment, my little brother, Jack, as you all know, Jack Despivy, table tennis champion extraordinaire, number 7 in the world, he is currently in Norway doing some training or tournament. I don't know. He's busy. He's a busy lad. He's always knocking about somewhere. But he just sent me a video and some pictures a few minutes before the podcast. Sent me from the top of a mountain. He is on a cable lift, whatever they're called. Those things where you get in the box and it's on a wire and you go up a mountain. He's just been on one of them and it looked bloody stunning. Oh my God, it looks so good. It made me want to go there. And I've always wanted to go to Norway anyway, because I love that part of the world. Norway, Finland, Sweden, all that kind of stuff. And yet the video he showed me, it reminded me a lot. I'm going to have to show him next time he's here. I've got a similar video from Japan. We went on the same kind of thing and it went up a mountain, but this mountain was a volcano. So when you get to the top, it's kind of smoking. And then you get off at the station because you're a psycho. Why would you ever get off at the top of a smoking volcano? But we did. We got off and you can buy smoked eggs. Just stabbed myself with a bit of stubble. What a bugger. Anyway, I feel like I'm waffling now, folks. But I'll see that. Oh, there's this thing at the moment. Last thing I want to touch on. There's a bottle cap challenge happening at the moment. I don't understand it. I've just seen a couple of things on Twitter about it, where people seem to do like a roundhouse kick onto a bottle and unscrew the top with the kick. And it's fascinating. If you can do it, that is pretty damn fascinating. But the first one I saw was Ryan Reynolds doing one with his Aviator gin. And it's funny because he just belts it. He fucks it up and then leaves. Because that's how he does. Ryan does not do things by normals. And that's a sentence. Jesus Christ, Chris, wake up. But yeah, I saw Jason Statham. He did one and he did it right. He did a good one. He did a little roundhouse kick with his macho manly legs and spun the cap off, and it was so impressive. But the most impressive one, the single most impressive one I've seen so far, is the aforementioned little brother, Jack Despivy, at JakeSTT on Twitter. He did one, and he did it with a bloody not baseball bat, what's it called? A table tennis paddle. And it was so cool because I didn't think you could do that, and it impressed me so, and I was quite proud of him. So yes, folks, that is my waffle for the week. It's been a weird one today. I'm sorry if I've been a bit scatterbrained and a bit whatever, but I'm super busy and my brain is in overdrive right now. So thanks a lot for listening, folks. I really deeply appreciate it. If you could do me a solid and tell your friends about the podcast, share it far and wide. I will tell you who my favourite person is if you send me tweets and such. I will call you out on the podcast and say, I love you. I may not mean it, I'm not going to lie, but I'll say it anyway. How's that sound? But yeah, tell you folks, leave a review, a rating, whatever you want to do. And remember, if you've got any questions or comments or you just want to hurl abuse at me, you can reach me on all the social medias. It's Chris Hunter Comedy on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And it's at Chris Hunter Com on Twitter, which is short for comedy. But they wouldn't let me have the full thing. So anyway, thanks a lot for listening, folks. And I'll see all you beautiful barstools next week. Bye-bye now.